Devon Reed never liked driving through Harrison County after sunset. It was one of those corners of Tennessee where the asphalt seemed tired of endless tires, and the pines along the road whispered stories no one wanted to hear. He was 32, a mechanic in Memphis, running a small shop on the outskirts of the city where he fixed old Chevys and Fords for folks who couldn't afford new cars. Devon was quiet, with hands that told stories through calluses and scars from wrenches. He had a daughter, Eliza, a 7-year-old girl with pigtails and a smile that could melt any day. For her sake, he stayed out of trouble, or at least tried to. That evening, October 14th, 2022, Devon was heading home from work. His old 2008 Dodge Charger hummed along Highway 64, its headlights cutting through the darkness, picking out yellowed grass and random road signs. He drove slowly, 53 miles per hour in a 55 zone, because he knew the cops in these parts hunted for any excuse, especially if you looked like him. A black man in a Titan's cap, with a dragon tattoo on his forearm, inked at 18 when he still believed in heroic tales. The radio played a soft Tracy Chapman song, and Devon even let himself smile, thinking about how Eliza had begged him for chocolate pancakes for breakfast. But then came the flash of blue and red lights. At first, he thought they were after someone else, maybe a drunk driver or a teen in a Toyota. But no, the patrol car latched onto his tail, its lights slicing the dark like knives. Devon glanced in the rearview mirror, feeling his heart pick up speed. "Stay calm," he told himself, flicking on his blinker and pulling onto the shoulder. He knew the rules. Hands on the wheel, no sudden moves, polite tone. His mom had drilled it into him as a kid, back when they lived in a neighborhood where cops showed up more often than the mailman. The officer stepped out, a white man, middle-aged, with short blonde hair and a jaw that looked carved from stone. His badge read T. Collins. He approached Devon's window with a flashlight in hand, its beam blinding, and a voice that sounded like he'd already decided something was wrong. "License and registration," Collins said, skipping any greeting. Devon nodded, reaching slowly for the glove box. "Take your time," the officer added, and there was something in his tone that made Devon tense. Not just a command, but a warning. "I was driving within the limit," Devon said, handing over the papers, keeping his voice steady. Collins took them, eyes locked on Devon, like he was fishing for a reason. "Where you been?" he asked, though it clearly didn't matter. "Working at my shop in Memphis," Devon replied. "Late for work," Collins tossed back, flipping through the license as if it hid some secret. "Client held me up," Devon explained, but he felt the conversation sliding somewhere dark. Collins stepped back and nodded at the door. "Step out of the car." Devon froze. "Sir, did I do something wrong?" he asked, knowing the answer wouldn't matter, but still hoping for logic. "I said, get out," Collins repeated, his hand already resting on his holster, fingers taut. Devon's throat tightened, but he complied, slowly opening the door, keeping his hands visible, and stepping onto the gravel shoulder. The air was cool, but sweat rolled down his back. "Hands behind your back," Collins ordered, and Devon realized this wasn't just a check. "For what?" slipped out, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. "You asking me questions?" Collins barked, and in the next second, Devon felt himself shoved against the car. His face hit the cold metal hood, arms twisted roughly behind him, handcuffs snapping shut with force that left bruises. "I've got a daughter at home," he said, trying to reach any shred of humanity in this man. "Quiet," Collins snapped, rummaging through Devon's pockets, tossing his wallet and keys to the ground. Then it got worse. Collins found the small folding knife, the one Devon carried for work, to cut zip ties or open parts boxes. "Oh, what do we have here?" the officer said, his voice dripping with fake surprise. "It's for work," Devon explained, but Collins twirled the knife in his hands like it was evidence of murder. You know I can arrest you for this right now? He asked, stepping so close Devon could smell coffee and tobacco on his breath. It's not a weapon, it's a tool, Devon said, but his words drowned in a new command. Face down. Devon didn't have time to resist. Collins drove a knee into his back, pinning him to the ground, gravel digging into his cheek as the air rushed out of his lungs. He heard the officer call for backup on the radio, but it all blurred into noise. His thoughts screamed about Eliza, how she'd wait for him at home, peering out the window. Then came a second blow, a fist to the ribs, and Devon groaned, pain flooding his body. "Stop resisting," Collins growled, though Devon lay still, choking on dust and fear. When the second car arrived, they dragged Devon into the patrol vehicle, his face bloody from a split lip, ribs throbbing with every breath. "You'll regret not cooperating," Collins threw out, slamming the door. Devon sat in the dark of the back seat, listening to the officers laugh outside, thinking only one thing: this wasn't the end. He wouldn't let it be. Devon sat in the back of the patrol car, pressed against the hard plastic divider, separating him from the officers up front. The darkness inside was stifling, pierced only by the faint flicker of lights bouncing off grimy windows. His wrists burned from the cuffs digging into his skin, and his ribs pulsed from Collins' blow. Every breath stabbed like a knife between bones. Blood from his split lip trickled down his chin, leaving a metallic taste, but he didn't wipe it. His hands were bound, and pride wouldn't let him ask for help. Outside, he heard the officers' voices. Collins and his partner, a younger guy with a sharp laugh, talking about how they'd had some fun and how this guy needs to know his place. Devon clenched his teeth, anger boiling in his chest, mixing with helplessness. He could still see Eliza in his mind, her small face at their Memphis home's window, her fingers clutching the teddy bear he'd bought for her birthday. She'd wait for him, and here he was, cuffed like a criminal over a knife that was just part of his job. The ride to the county precinct took 20 minutes, but to Devon, it felt like forever. The car stopped in front of a low concrete building, surrounded by barbed wire and a few wilted bushes rotting under dim streetlights. Collins opened the door and yanked him out by the elbow with such force that Devon nearly fell onto the asphalt. "Move!" the officer snarled, shoving him toward the entrance. Collins' partner, a skinny guy with a J. Parker badge, followed, holding Devon's knife in an evidence bag like a trophy. Inside, the precinct smelled of disinfectant and stale sweat, its walls painted a dingy gray fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps. Devon stayed silent as they photographed him, took his prints, and read the charges: resisting arrest and carrying a concealed weapon. He knew the knife wasn't a weapon under Tennessee law if the blade was under 4 inches. His was just 3, but Collins clearly wasn't interested in explanations. They threw him into a holding cell, a cramped cage with metal benches and graffiti scratched into the walls. Names, dates, curses. An old homeless man with a gray beard and a bottle hidden in a brown bag under his jacket was already there. He glanced at Devon and muttered, "Caught by Collins, huh? That jerk loves playing sheriff." Devon nodded, sitting as far away as he could, leaning against the cold wall. He tried to gather his thoughts. He needed a lawyer, a phone call, someone to tell Eliza her dad would be back. The only person who came to mind was his older sister, Sherry, who lived in Jackson, an hour away. She was a nurse with a sharp tongue that could scare even Collins, but Devon didn't want to drag her into this. Not yet. An hour later, they let him make a call. He dialed Marissa, his friend who watched Eliza when he worked late. Her voice was sleepy but alarmed when she answered. "Devon? Where the hell are you?" He sighed, trying to sound calm. "Marissa, I'm at the police station. They picked me up on the highway. Tell Eliza I'll be home tomorrow, okay? And call Sherry. I need her help." Marissa cursed, her tone sharpening. "What did they do this time?" "You didn't break any laws." "Just do it," he cut in, and the line went dead as a guard banged on the desk, signaling time was up. Sherry arrived by morning. Devon saw her through the visitation room's glass. Tall, lean, with a short afro and eyes that could burn holes in walls. She sat across from him, lips tight, and said softly, "Tell me." He spilled everything, from the flashing lights to the rib punch, the knife to Colin's laughter. Sherry listened, fingers tapping the table, and when he finished, she leaned forward. "These bastards think they can do whatever they want, but we'll get them, Devon. I know someone." She meant Trevor Bishop, a Memphis lawyer who specialized in police brutality and racial injustice cases. Trevor was a local legend, an African-American with a Harvard degree who'd come back to Tennessee to deal with the white mess, as he put it. Trevor showed up at the precinct by noon, a man in his 40s, in a navy suit, with graying temples and a voice that sounded born for the courtroom. He greeted Devon with a firm handshake and got straight to it. "Your story's textbook. Stopped for no reason, escalated for nothing. Fake charges. We've got a shot, not just to win, but to tear them apart." Devon looked at him, still feeling the ache in his ribs. "I just want to go home to my daughter," he said quietly. Trevor smiled, but his eyes blazed. "You will. Then we'll make them pay." The concealed weapon charge fell apart fast. Trevor proved the knife was a legal tool, not a weapon, citing Tennessee code. But resisting arrest stuck, and Collins pushed for a trial, claiming Devon resisted aggressively and posed a threat. Trevor filed for bail, and by evening Devon was out, leaning on Sherry, who waited at the door with an ice pack for his face. Eliza ran to him when he stepped inside, hugging his legs so tight he nearly fell. "Daddy, why do you have bruises?" she asked, her eyes shining with tears. He knelt, hugged her, and whispered, "Just a bad day, baby. But I'm here." The trial started 2 months later, in January 2023. The Memphis courtroom was old, with worn wooden benches and the smell of floor wax. Collins sat at the defense table, uniform pressed, his face screaming confidence. His partner, Parker, fidgeted with a pen, clearly unprepared for what Trevor had planned. Devon sat beside Trevor, in a suit Sherry forced him into, sweat trickling down his back despite the cold outside. The jury, a mix of white and black faces, young moms to retirees, watched him with curiosity and suspicion. Trevor began by dismantling Collins's report piece by piece. "The officer claims Mr. Reed resisted," he said, holding the paper up for the jury. "But where's the proof? No body cam footage. It malfunctioned that night," he says. "No witnesses except the second officer who backs his story. And here's the medical report. Broken ribs, busted face, cuff bruises. Who was violent here?" Collins sat still, but his jaw tightened as Trevor called the first witness, Marissa. She took the stand, head high, voice trembling only slightly. "I've known Devon 5 years," she said. "He doesn't fight, doesn't argue. He cares for his daughter and works late to pay bills. That call from jail, I heard him trying not to scare Eliza." Jurors exchanged glances. Some nodded. Then Trevor showed a photo of the knife. Small, worn, with a blade barely fit to cut cardboard. "This is the weapon Officer Collins beat a man over," he said, and the room went quiet. Collins went next. He spoke confidently, meeting the jurors' eyes. "I stopped a suspicious car in a high-crime area. The driver acted aggressive, wouldn't cooperate. I followed protocol to protect myself and the community." Trevor pounced on cross-examination. "So where's the footage? Why does your partner echo your story word for word, like it's rehearsed? And why does a man driving home to his kid look like he's been in a boxing ring?" Collins flushed, but answered coolly, "He resisted. I defended myself." The trial lasted 3 days, and each day Devon felt the weight press harder. He saw doubt in the jurors' eyes, but also hesitation. Collins was a 15-year cop, and Devon was just a mechanic with a dragon tattoo and an old car. Trevor worked tirelessly, calling a body cam expert who said malfunctions were rare, and a nurse who'd examined Devon that night. She said the injuries didn't match resistance. They looked like a beating. But Devon knew it might not be enough. In these parts, cops often walked free, and justice stayed a word in the dictionary. The night before the verdict, he sat with Eliza on the couch, reading her a tale of a brave knight. She fell asleep on his shoulder, and Devon stared at her peaceful face, vowing, if the court didn't give him truth, he'd find it himself. The verdict morning dawned cold and damp. January 19th, 2023. The sky over Memphis, heavy with gray clouds promising snow, Tennessee rarely saw. Devon sat in the courtroom, fists clenched on his knees, the suit Sherry had ironed to perfection, feeling tight, like someone else's skin. Trevor beside him flipped through notes, his pen tapping softly, the only sound Devon caught through his pounding pulse. Across the room, Collins sat stone-faced, uniform pristine, while Parker beside him nervously adjusted his tie, avoiding the jury's gaze. The courtroom was half empty. A few local reporters, Sherry and Marissa in the back, and an old man in a tattered coat who seemed to just want a warm spot to escape the chill. The judge, an older woman with gray curls and glasses perched on her nose, entered with a look that promised no nonsense. Her name was Esther Crawford, known for tolerating no foolishness from lawyers or cops. "The jury has reached a verdict," she announced, and the room fell silent. Breaths held. The foreman, a middle-aged man with a mustache and faded shirt, stood and read, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Officer Thomas Collins, not guilty of excessive force." The words hit Devon like a bullet, sharp, quiet, deadly. Air left his lungs, and Trevor squeezed his shoulder, whispering, "It's not over." But Devon knew it was. The system had won again. Collins allowed a faint smirk as the judge banged her gavel, closing the case. "Mr. Reed, your charges are dropped," she added, glancing at him with something like pity. "You're free." But Devon didn't feel free. He left the room, avoiding Collins, who was already muttering to Parker, chuckling. Sherry caught him in the hall, eyes blazing. "This is bullshit," she said, gripping his hand. "They let him off, Devon." "I know," he replied softly, voice quaking with pent-up rage. Marissa approached with Eliza, who held his hand and asked, "Daddy, did we win?" He knelt, forcing a smile. "Not quite, baby, but we don't give up." That night, Devon sat in the kitchen, holding a glass of whiskey Sherry poured to calm his nerves. Eliza slept in her room, her drawing, Daddy in a car with a big sun overhead, on the table. Trevor called, voice heavy, "We can appeal, Devon, or file a civil suit. It's not done." But Devon heard the exhaustion in his tone. Even Trevor knew the odds were slim. "Thanks," he said, hanging up, staring into the dark beyond the window. Collins would go back to patrolling, beating others, laughing at others, and no one would stop him. The thought burned like acid, eating him from the inside. The next few weeks were quiet but not peaceful. Devon returned to the shop, fixed cars, smiled at customers, but a coldness settled in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Sherry noticed first. "You're planning something," she said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Eliza kick a ball around the yard. Devon didn't answer, just sipped his beer and glanced at the road where those red and blue lights once flashed. He wasn't giving up, but court wasn't his battlefield. He needed another way. The idea came by chance. A man walked into the shop, skinny, with tattoos on his neck and trembling hands as he handed over keys to his Harley. His name was Roy, one of those cash-paying clients who didn't like questions. While Devon swapped the chain, Roy got chatty. "Heard the cops roughed you up recently. Collins, right?" Devon nodded, focused on the bike. That bastard beat me once, too, Roy added, voice dropping. Would have taken him down, but no proof. Devon looked up, and something in Roy's eyes, a mix of fear and hate, resonated. If you had proof, what would you do? He asked. Roy grinned crookedly. I'd find a way. Those words stuck with Devon. Proof. Collins bragged in court about his broken camera, but Devon knew men like him always had a weak spot. He started watching. Not every day, not obviously, just when he could. He learned Collins patrolled Highway 64 every night from 7 to midnight, stopped at Dixie Diner for coffee at 9, then parked by an old bridge with weak signal to rest. Devon bought a cheap pair of binoculars from a pawn shop and sat in his car half a mile away, observing. One night, he saw Collins pull over another driver, a young guy in a Honda, and run the same script. Shoving, yelling, cuffs. But this time, Devon was ready. He had an old phone with a camera and recorded it all, grainy but clear. Collins punching the guy's face, laughing as he fell. Devon showed the footage to Trevor. The lawyer watched silently, then said, "This is gold, brother. But if we take it to court, they'll just say you provoked him. We need a bigger hit." That's when Devon realized court wasn't his justice. He thanked Trevor and left, the phone in his pocket like a loaded gun. Through Roy, he found a hacker, a girl named Casey, living in a basement in East Memphis, surrounded by monitors and energy drink cans. She was pale, with green hair and a nose piercing, but her fingers danced over the keyboard like a pianist's. "Want to take down a cop?" she asked, eyes on the screen. "I want him to pay," Devon replied. Casey cracked the police database in 2 hours. Patrol logs, reports, even Collins' personal files. There was dirt, driver complaints, hushed-up excessive force cases, even photos of him drinking with other officers at a bar after an incident. But the gem was a dashcam clip Collins forgot to delete, dated a week after Devon's arrest. It showed him beating another man, laughing, "You're next to regret it." Devon sat with Casey till dawn, sifting through the evidence. "I can send this to the press," she said, sipping a Monster. "No," Devon cut in. "It's mine." He took the flash drive and left, a plan forming. He didn't want just shame for Collins. He wanted him to feel the same powerlessness, the same fear. The next night, Devon waited by the bridge. He knew Collins' routine better than the man himself. When the patrol car stopped, Devon stepped from the shadows, holding not a knife, but a megaphone hooked to his phone. He played the recording. Collins' voice, his laugh, the victim's cries, blasting over the highway, echoing off the trees. Collins leapt from the car, face pale, eyes darting for the source. "What the hell is this?" he yelled, drawing his gun. But Devon was faster. He flicked on his Charger's headlights, blinding the officer, and tossed a copy of the flash drive wrapped in paper that read, "You're next." Collins dropped to his knees, scrambling for the drive in the dust, as Devon got in his car and drove off, heart pounding with adrenaline. The next day, the footage hit the web, not through the media, but an anonymous account Casey set up at his request. It went viral. "Tennessee cop beats helpless drivers." Headlines screamed from every local site. Protests erupted outside the precinct. People demanded Collins' arrest, and the police department issued a vague internal investigation statement. But Devon knew the truth. Collins had lost everything: reputation, power, peace. A week later, they found him in his car by that same bridge, drunk, with a resignation letter on the seat. Someone had spray-painted "Justice" in red on his door. Devon sat with Eliza on the couch that night as the news showed the protest. She'd drawn another picture. Daddy with a sword, standing over a toppled car. "Are you a knight, Daddy?" she asked. He hugged her, feeling the rib pain finally fade. "Sometimes you have to be," he said softly. But the story didn't end. A month later, Devon got a letter. No signature, no return address. Inside was a small folding knife, like the one Collins took that night, and a note. Did you think it was over? Devon looked out the window, where pine shadows flickered, and realized someone else was watching.